Welcome along to my channel. Today we're doing reading for Son of Sagittarius, and keep in mind that this does not resonate for every Sagittarius. If you'd like a personal reading, it's going to be the first link in the description down below. Repeat that first link in the description down below for personal reading. You also find a bunch of other things there in the description. You can find my Etsy shop, which has my tarot and my oracle cards on there. Holographic stickers, as well as a mini holographic version of my oracle cards. Pins, which are acrylic pins. You have Serapis Bay pin, Green Man pin, White Raven pin. All that's in the description down below on my Etsy shop. You also find my shirt store at my website, different social media platforms I'm on, as well as Patreon. All that's in the description down below. If you'd like to donate to the channel, feel free to do so. I do appreciate donations here. So, Sagittarius, let's see what Spirit has in store for yourself. Okay, so let's see what we have. That's enough shuffling. Number 8. Number 3. Number 8 once again. Number 1. We have number 4. Number 4. 7. 3. Okay, Sagittarius, so let's have a look in the book here and try to find these cards. Okay. Here we go. So we have this, it's the Knight. So it says, new is the number 1, the first impulse of creation that brought everything into existence, the worlds, the Turu, and the human race. The 3 undulating lines in this hieroglyphic name represent this primary energy in the forms of water, or not water, waves. For the ancient Egyptians, Nu was conceived to be the primordial water, the deep and boundless watery mass of energy in the sky. The terrestrial counterpart of this ocean was the river Nile, itself symbolic of the fluidic astral current necessary for all magical and spiritual work. The 3 vases above the sign for the sky, Pet, are the containers of the energy above the sky, that which is above. But the vases are not only the containers of the energy, they're also the energy that is contained there. Energy above is identical with the energy below. Nu is both the origin and the end of creation. He is the totality. This concept of the number 1 is far removed from our Western way of thinking, which considers 1 to be the beginning of progression. The Egyptians used no 0. The poison of the 0 did not even exist. The number 1 was the origin, the totality, and the possibility of every creation. You might also note that Greco-Roman culture, there was a reversal of masculine and feminine polarities. As a consequence, the earth became female, Gaia instead of Geb. The heavens became male, and that was replaced by Uranus. Also, the moon, associated in Egypt with the male gods Khonsu and Thoth, became identified with the Greek Artemis and Roman Diana. For the Egyptian mentality, at least in the pre-dynastic times, when the primordials originated, the concept of spirit being opposite to matter was not even considered. There was only a difference of subtlety in vibration. There was no duality, but rather a great unity in which different levels of being were defined as various differentiations of the primal energy. And the gods of Egyptian, Budge notes that Nu was frequently identified with Pet, the sky, and the heaven above it. Not. Although he originally represented the watery mass that was supposed to exist between the two, the name Nu has been translated as abyss and deep. It has also been suggested to mean young, which signifies the primordial matter takes its characteristics from Nu. The name Pet is important in the hieroglyph for Nu. Being the spiritual principle within the inert mass of watery matter from which the world was created, Pet also signifies the subtle bodies, the Kaaba, and the Hadid. Invisible connections between the physical and spiritual essence. In the spirit, there is unlimited possibility. In manifestation, there is an infinite quality that can be assimilated and developed. Nu is a sound or hieroglyph representing energy, and Nu is the netter who unites the cosmic energy of the terrestrial. Nu is the principle necessary to accomplish the operation of transformation. The colors associated with Nu are blue, white, and black. And in the card, they form a spiral motion that could be both centrifugal and centrifugal. Okay. Both implosive and explosive. Black represents the phase of origin, the beginning of the great work of the alchemist, in its inert state, the chaos from which primordial water was derived. Blue is the color of Venus, of the netter Het Hert, meaning the attraction and cohesion necessary in every work of creation. White is a mercurial, watery state of metamorphosis. The beginning and the end. The beginning of a potent transformation with far-reaching possibilities, Sagittarius. This is what you're connecting with right now. The beginning and the end. You are beginning something, and you're also ending something. There's something here that's transforming. Okay? Blue, important color. Black, important color. White, important color. Those candle colors, also important there. But this is what you're doing. 4. So, I think we have anything else in this book right here. Which one does this belong to? Okay. Pet, yes. So we have one in this book, which is number 4. From Keper, to make, take form, become. Also, Keper means 4. I came into being. From unformed matter, I came into existence, like the god Keper Ra. As Ra is the sun god at noon, and autumn is the setting sun, so Keper Ra is the sun about to rise. In Egyptian story of creation, Ra takes the form of the god Keper Ra, the god who was most intimately connected with the creation of everything that existed, from the heavens to Duat, from plants and animals to humans. This self-created god existing alone in the primeval waters of Nu, we were just talking about that, Sagittarius, where the sun was hidden, uttered in his own name as a word of power, and came into being as Keper Ra. He then created matter on which to stand and produced the first divine couple, Shu and Tefnut, from himself. Shu and Tefnut created a space between the heavens and the earth that allowed the sun to rise and shine upon the earth for the first time. So from one god came 3, and from these 3 principles came the diversity of all life upon the planet. As the gods are seed the Keper Ra, so the first human sprang from his tears falling onto the sexual organs to populate the earth, their offspring. The god Keper Ra is shown in his well-known form of the scarab beetle, worshipped before Keper was identified in the great sun god Ra. The scarab was from the earliest times associated with transformation, new life coming from the dead. Like Keper Ra himself, the scarab beetle was thought to be self-conceived, collecting the dung on which it feeds. The scarab lays its eggs and rolls the dung around them to form balls. These balls of matter containing the potential life were compared to the globe of the sun, the scarab that carries the dung on balls its head or rolls them across the ground, so the Keper Ra is seen to roll the ball of the sun across the sky. In its first phase of transformation, Keper Ra symbolizes the inert but living matter that is about to come into existence for the first time. This alchemically the black phase, when the egg in its dung ball form, or its dung ball is hidden from the light. When the egg dies to become larva form, the transformation takes its place in darkness. The white phase represents the scarab larva that feeds on its egg and its dung covering to finally metamorphs into the new scarab. In this red phase, the animation of the new life form is complete and will in its turn produce eggs and then die. This process of transformation symbolized by the scarab was not only related to the sun's daily cycle of birth and apparent death, it was also applied by the Egyptians to the spiritual process of death and resurrection. The dead human body was likened to the dung ball of the scarab containing the spark of life in the form of the spiritual body to which the prayers and ceremonies were addressed on the day of the funeral. An image of the scarab was placed directly over the heart and mummified body, and the whole mummification process was an involved ceremony to liberate new life from the dead. So Keper Ra was not only the creator of life, but also the restorer or renewer of life. Another connection with the scarab is its similarity in its appearance to the iris or sacred serpent at the top of the human skull, which divides the left and right sides of the brain. The most highly prized scarabs were crafted from gold and silver to represent the binary systems of Sirius, the sun, and the moon as the two eyes of Ra. After Keper brought forth the sun from the hidden waters of Nu, he created another eye, the moon, which he empowered to rule over the earth. The dual nature of creation is recapitulated by the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems of the body. These active solar and passive lunar flows of energy are known in Eastern yogic traditions as Ida and Pingala. Another example of this dual system is the human heart with its double left and right chambers, from ancient times being the organ most closely associated with the sun, and with ceremonies of Keper Ra. It has been suggested that the comparison of the sun to the scarab's dung ball actually describes the form of our solar system. The sun was considered to be the excrement or waste matter from the Sirius system that formed into the sun and its orbiting planets. Yet, within its inert matter, the fire of Sirius is contained, and through Keper Ra, our system is regenerated and new life forms emerge from death. In the journey through the duat, the beetle Keper Ra rides the boat of Ra, and during the 12th hour, the darkest hour of the night, Keper Ra takes the place of the solar disk in the boat. He is a forerunner of the dawn, appearing from the darkness in its brilliance, the old sun made young again. Transformation of a situation, inner transformation, renewal of energy, Sagittarius. So it feels like creation here. Yes, there is transformation. You are transforming something. You are bringing something new. You're working with the gods here to bring something new into being, into existence here. You understand that? We both talk about creation here. It does talk about transformation, but big theme here on creation. Creating something from nothing. Sagittarius. Okay, that could be like new life. That could be something new. There's something new spiritually here that you are bringing forth here, that the gods here are bringing forth here. Number 8 here, Imhotep. He who comes in peace. Imhotep is a god of healing and medicine, the great healer, who watched over all who practiced the mingled science of medicine and magic, worshipped primarily in Memphis. Imhotep was called the son of Ptah and expressed the creative nature of his father through his healing powers. According to legend, Imhotep actually lived in Egypt and was advisor and chief architect to the pharaoh Zoser of the Third Dynasty. He was also a skilled physician, so famous and highly regarded that he became deified some 2,000 years after his death. As a netter of medicine, Imhotep was invoked for the healing of disease and injury. His work involved both the living and the dead, for he also attended the embalming of bodies using spices and drugs and the magical incantations, and ensured the soul's protection. As a great sage and man of knowledge, Imhotep absorbed some of the abilities of Thoth, reflected in this image, where he is shown seated with the papyrus scroll on his lap in the... I don't know how to say that word. In his right hand, in the duat, he uttered the words to protect the dead. He was the wise one, the one who comes on to him who calls upon him wherever he may be. Staff shows his power of directing energy for healing, balance, and harmony. It was Imhotep who was called upon when the Nile failed to flood and spread its life-giving waters across the delta. And it was Imhotep who saved Egypt from starvation after 7 years of terrible drought. In his role of architect, Imhotep was known as the master of works, but it is as a healing netter that he was most highly revered, later to be identified as the god Aesculapius? I don't know how to say that word. Who brought the art of healing to the Greeks? Power of healing, the healer. Sagittarius, what if it feels like you're working with this as well? There's some sort of healing that you're doing. There's something like you're actually learning healing here. Sagittarius. That's what you're working with. Number 7. We have Khonsu, from Kens to travel. Khonsu is the fruit of Mut and Amun, the completion of the Theban triad of Neteru. In pre-dynastic times, Khonsu existed as a moon god, one of the oldest gods who represented the different phases of the moon. He was a messenger of the gods like Thoth, with whom he was strongly connected, and as the one who journeyed through the skies as the moon, he was called the Traveler. When Khonsu's father Amun became identified as Amun-Ra, Khonsu was likewise identified with Heru as a form of the young sun god, and he wears the crescent of the new moon, surmounted by the moon and the sun united in the disk of an eclipse. He holds all the scepters together, with the exception of Ujjad. The papyrus in bloom and the combination of the scepters represent the reunion of spirit, soul, and body in a new unity capable of resurrection. The fluid, aquatic principle of Mut and Amun is continued in Khonsu, who stands above the water supported by the measure of Mut. The lunar phases were the first way of measuring time, ruling the earth tides in harmony with the cosmic law of Mat. Like many phases of the moon, Khonsu is represented in different forms: a child in the morning, an old man in the evening, youth at the beginning of the year, who cometh as a child after he had become infirm, and who renewed his birth like the disk. He is both the spring, sun, and moon, rejuvenating the body, especially the fluid functions of the blood and reproductive organs. He makes the sap rise in the budding plants of spring and helps fertilization with the energies of the new moon. In this aspect, he is described as a fiery bull. As a light bearer, he makes women fruitful and makes the human germ to grow in his mother's womb. Here, he is shown a mummified form, representing the eclipse of the sun and the moon, at a time regarded particularly powerful for magical work. Although he is mummified, he is shown as a youth in the pride of a child. He has been reborn in the subtle light of the new moon. He has overcome the powers of darkness, sometimes shown as two crocodiles on which he stands, as he dispels darkness and demons through his power of exorcism. For the Egyptians, the moon was not regarded as negative. It was a constantly changing flux of energies, a mirror that reflected the light of Ra onto the earth. The Menet of Het Hurt that Khonsu wears described as the sun and the moon, the male and female aspects joined in harmony and pleasure. In the stories where the gods are killed and eaten for the deceased to absorb their spiritual power, it is Khonsu who cuts their throats and pulls out their intestines. He possesses the absolute power over all hostile spirits in the earth, air, and sea. As a great healer, he banishes disease and madness, for he is the sun who shines in the night. Rejuvenating the power of the moon, his magical power was also transformed into statues, which performed miraculous healings by driving out the demons of disease and restoring health and happiness to the sufferer. There's another aspect to Khonsu notified here, who translate his name as placenta of the king. As a placenta, Khonsu is the twin of the king who dies at birth. As a placenta, he is the king of king's Ka, his power or vital force. Travel a long journey, exorcism of mind or body. Sagittarius. So like I said, there's something healing here. Alright? Maybe where you're getting rid of diseases here. You may be getting rid of dark spirits, demons, all that sort of stuff here. And you're bringing new life here, Sagittarius. Okay? They're traveling here spiritually to do this, working through all this here to do this. So we have... Okay. So this right here. It says mighty fullness. Throughout the dynasties of ancient Egypt, the cow was regarded as a sacred animal and identified with three goddesses in particular: Het Hurt, Mat Urt, and Nut. The cow was a symbol of fertility and nourishment, par excellence, and under the name of Mat Urt, represented the abundant and continuous source of matter available for impregnation. In earliest times, she was a female personification of the watery mass that formed in the substance of the world. As with Aset, Het Hurt, and Nut, she is a form of primeval creation or creative principle. And she was shown in human form. She takes the image of a pregnant woman with full breast, ready to give milk, sometimes with the lotus flower twined around her scepter, the lotus from which the sun rose for the first time. She wears Menet of love and pleasure around her neck. In this card, she appears as a great celestial cow covered in stars, whose home is in the sky. In the rites of Osir, the god's body was laid in a wooden box in the form of a cow, so he would be reborn from the womb of the celestial cow. She gave nourishment to the dead in Amenta, and in the Book of the Dead, the deceased says, I behold Ra, who was born yesterday from the buttocks of the goddess Mat Urt. The watery abyss of heaven, or the image of the eye of Ra in the morning in his daily birth. Describes Mat Urt in the Book of Dead, making an image of herself to place under the head of Ra while he is setting in the evening. A similar cow amulet and petition is placed under the head of the deceased, saying, O Amen, who art in heaven, turn thy face upon the dead body of thy son, make him sound and strong in the underworld. In the duat, Mat Urt was also linked with Mat. The judgment of the dead in primitive times took place in the hall of Mat Urt, and it is said that in those ancient times it was the body and not the soul that was judged by the Neturu. As the goddess gave birth to all living things, so she presided over the judgment of the person's deeds after death. She could renew the body and restore life through her magical powers. She is also linked with Thoth and with 7 forms of Het Urt. There were 7 wise ones of Mat Urt who were together with Thoth, planning the world. These 7 wise ones were born from Mount Earth, and coming from the primordial water, they took form of 7 hawks and flew upwards into the sky. Together with Thoth, they concerned with writing, learning, and studying sacred sciences. Unlimited possibilities, a time for seeding plants. All possibilities are potential, but not yet realized. Sagittarius, it's talking about possibilities, talking about transformation here, but we're also talking about that of fertility, birthing, and impregnation here. That's something quite interesting. It's number 3. Anpu, opener of the ways, from amp to wrap around. The jackal-headed god, Anpu is a powerful duat netter. His worship goes back to the very ancient times, and he was revered throughout Egypt as a friend and helper of the dead. His symbolic animal, the jackal or desert dog, lived in the mountains and deserts where the burial grounds were situated and was always associated with the tombs of the dead. Anpu was a child of Osir, a god with whom he was closely associated, and he was conceived through Osir's alliance with the goddess Nebhet. Abandoned by her, he was brought up by Osset, and he was always seen to be her faithful companion. As we have already noted, Nebhet is the alchemical principle of decomposition and decay, and Anpu, through his association, appeared as a dark god, intimately concerned with the embalming of the bodies of the dead. So I'm guessing here this is like ANUBIS. As he embalmed his father, Osir, to prevent the influences of time and decay, so Anpu watched over the embalming of humans, and he is often shown standing beside the funeral bier where the mummy is laid. As a dweller in the chamber of embalmment, he is a preserver of life and protector against the devouring goddess, Ammit, so the dead may be reborn as Osir was into the new life. He is always shown in the judgment scene, checking the balance of the scales and regarding the door at the end of the hall of the body goddess. As one of the main Naturu in the Book of the Dead, he accompanies the dead through the Duat on their way to Osir, and is Anpu, who receives the body in the tomb. He is another keeper of the threshold. In this card, Anpu holds the Ankh as his function of preserver of life and the scepter of magical power, the Uwis. 2 jackals lie before him, representing both Anpu and Ap Uat, another jackal god, who shares the task of guiding the dead. Of these 2, Naturu says the function of each god was to open the ways. Anpu was the opener of the north, Ap Uat was the opener of the south. In fact, Anpu was the personification of the summer solstice, Ap Uat was the winter solstice. As Anpu and Huru were both sons of Osir, they were strongly connected, so much so that Anpu came to be portrayed as a double god in the process. In the procession of Osset from the ancient ceremonies of Osir, this 2-faced messenger of heaven, and the Duat is described as having a face that is alternately black as night and golden as the day. As the guide of heaven and the leader of the souls to Osir, he was a beneficent god, but as a personification of death and decay, he was a being who inspired terror. There's another aspect to Anpu hinted by Plutarch, a priest at Delphi who visited Egypt to study religious and astronomical knowledge of the Egyptian priests. He mentions secret doctrines which were only made by known to those who were initiated into the worship of Anpu in regard to Anpu's connection with Nebt, Het, and Aset, he says. By ANUBIS, they understand the horizontal circle, which divides the invisible part of the world, which they call Nephthys, from the visible, to which they gave the name Isis. And as the circle equally touches upon the confines of both light and darkness, it may be looked upon as common to them both. From the circumstance arose that resemble which I imagine between Anubis and the dog is being observed of this animal, and he is equally watchful as by day as night. The jackal symbol, interchangeable with the dog, has a direct relationship with the Sirius dog star, and Anpu as a close attendant of Aset is a just an astronomical fact of which ancient Egyptians were undoubtedly aware. In the Sirius mystery, Herbert Temple explores these connections, concluding Anubis and Plutarch's account seem to refer specifically to the orbit of Sirius B. It's described as a circle or orbit separating the dark Nephthys from the light Isis or Sirius. In other words, I take Anubis to represent the orbit of Sirius B around Sirius A. Sirius B is a dark, dwarf companion of Sirius, invisible to the human eye, only photographed from Earth as recently as 1970, yet the Egyptian priesthood not only knew of its existence, they were also aware of its function on a microcosmic level. A spiritual magical guide into the occult mysteries, a friend and trusted advisor. So you have Anubis here guiding you. Sagittarius guiding you through all this here, opening the ways, opening these doors here where you can connect with all this here. Sagittarius. Number 4. Or 4. The 42 assessors. When the deceased has been admitted into the hall of judgment, he is confronted with the 42 assessors, or judges of Maat. They are under her jurisdiction, for Maat is a cosmic law, and the heart of the deceased is weighed against her feather. The assessors stand on either side of the hall, 21 to a side, and one by one they hear the disposition of the deceased as he makes a solemn statement that he is not committed at a certain crime. These 42 denials are known as the negative confession, and depending on his actions through life and his knowledge of the names of the gods, the deceased is either given the power to live, or else he is thrown into the monster Ammit to be devoured. The 42 assessors are linked directly to the 42 nomes of Egypt. The terrestrial divisions of the land, 22 for Upper Egypt and 20 for the Delta. Each nome is clearly defined by its name, Netter, the capital city, the emblem, and each assessor has jurisdiction over a particular crime. The Netter being a description of a certain character or quality the deceased must identify within himself. In Egyptian tradition, the deceased is really judging himself, and the assessors are the projections of his own heart. It's the truthfulness of the individual himself that tips the scale of Maat, and nothing else. There are suggestions given to the significance of the number 42. There's a relationship between the 42 gnomes and the location pieces of Osir's dismembered body scattered by Seth after murdering him. And in the keys is in the number 7, a lunar number of great significance. In the phases of human life, his body is cut into 14 pieces 2 times. 7, his reign on Earth is said to be about 28 years 4 times. 7, the assessors in his realm, the Duat of 42, 6 times 7. In astrological terms, the processed lunar phases in an individual's chart are measured 7-year cycles, each marking a period of growth and transition. These also coincide with Saturn cycles, which is appropriate for the nature of the journey throughout Duat. At the judgment, like the 42 assessors, Asur is not a judge but a witness. Throughout the process of death and rebirth, Asur is the principle of life, witnessing the continual metamorphosis of consciousness and the human struggle towards realization. The 42 assessors of Asur are the judges before whom the deceased must clarify himself not guilty of 42 sins. After the negative confession that the deceased may then call attention to the good he has done during life and declares Asur that has done Mat and purified himself with Wat and nothing else. And now the members lack Mat. Finally, he must know the magical names that allow him to leave the Hall of Mat. He must pass the final questioning of thought before entering the regions of the blessed. Judgment by self or others with the outcome depending on integrity of querent purification. Sagittarius, so there's judgment here. And I feel like there's judgment on souls. There's judgment of the dead returning to be reborn. Sagittarius. Number 8. Okay, so it says, coming forth by day, in the 12th hour of the night, the dead sun god is reborn under the form of Khepera. Before his final exit into the light, the boat is towed by 12 gods through the body of the snake, the boat entering his tail in thick darkness as a form of the old dead god, emerging from the snake's mouth not only alive but made young again. The meaning of this card is regeneration, seen in the cycle of the snake's slowing its skin every single season to be physically renewed. The magical trip is over. The sun god has reached the end of Amanta and passes through an opening in the final barrier, which is painted black and dotted with red. 2 goddesses, Aset and Nebhet, hold Khepera aloft. From here he'll be received into the outstretched arms of Nut. These 2 goddesses also stand guard at the final pylon as they did at the entry, one on either side in form of rearing Uri. Here is the rebirth through the exit of the light of day. The book, The Coming Forth by Day, tells how to overcome all negativity and darkness of the self, how to act magically in every situation, because all of the monsters in the present duat are only projections of the individual unconscious, not only experienced after death but also invoked consciously during magical initiation. The Book of the Dead is a description of the alchemical work from its black phase of death and disintegration to the golden light of perfection. The journey through Amanta is an initiation trip through all stages of knowledge, from the dissolution of the body and the creation of new consciousness in the darkness. Death is transformed into new life, and to acknowledge and experience the shadow, the great depths of consciousness that lie beyond the boundaries of the mundane world, is to complete a crossing or crossover into other dimensions for our subtle bodies. Number 64 is completion and relates to Thoth, who is the final world, because according to a very ancient myth, it is Thoth who put back together the Eye of Heru, the victorious one, which Seth shattered into 64 parts. It's a spiritual awakening, enlightenment, victory. It's a successful completion of a cycle. You see, this is going to be successful here. Sagittarius, it's like, this is what you're connecting with here. You have ANUBIS opening this door here, where you're working with that of healing. You're working with that of, it is healing diseases, healing that of fertility there. Removing these dark beings here, removing demons and all those things like that, right? Sagittarius. Okay, and then you have something new here coming into your life. You have something being formed here. It could be that of actual births here, Sagittarius. That cycle is going to be complete. That this could be successful here. Okay? Almost feels like you have something being formed from nothing here. Sagittarius, you have something being rebirthed here, like a soul being born back into the world. So let's get some runes and some chunks of stuff. This Egyptian snake goddess. You have Hathor. You have Serapis Bey, which is said master of light, which you're connecting to. You have this Aztec serpent god, which starts with a Q. You have this moon, dragon, star. So you're connecting with the moon here, Sagittarius, the dragon. You're connected to dragon peak power, strength, good luck, prosperity, supernatural powers. Then we have the star. Star can be that of Aquarius. here. You can have those placements, one around you. Star can also be wishing upon a star. Got this white raven, which you're connected to. White raven can be peace, cleansing, purification, protection, all that here, which we do see that in this reading. We have the dragon once again. Just describe the dragon, Sagittarius, not doing it again. We have a rainbow on it, which can be ascension there. Now you are being spiritually initiated into this Sagittarius, where there's a journey here you're going through. So, that's all I have for you. Like I said, first link in the description down below for a personal reading. You can also go to my Etsy shop. Go in there, go buy something. Really appreciate that. If you want to see more content, don't forget to subscribe. Bye, guys.